Hi doll faces, I'm doing a little bit of housework today and I thought I would take you along with me for the ride. Basically I'm going through a massive, one of those huge blue IKEA bags that you grab when you're on a really big shopping trip, the big bags for life. I've got one of them completely filled with clothing and I basically just need to figure out what is what. It's all clean clothing, it was all washed at different times, ironed and folded at different times, and then just sort of left in the living room while I was away at a festival, and then I was away for another weekend, and basically I haven't had time to put things away, so I'm just going to be making things into piles of like t-shirts, skirts, dresses, underwear, because I have different areas in my drawers and my wardrobe where I keep different things. So I thought I'd make a video at the same time, two birds, one stone. I know you guys haven't seen me in my kitchen for a little while. I was really enjoying doing those housework rambles a lot actually. But I was made aware that I really needed to try and up my audio game, because there were some people that couldn't really hear me properly with all of the washing up noises going on. So I kind of felt it was only fair to, you know, to make an effort to up my audio before I actually sort of made any more videos in the kitchen doing washing up. But it's been pretty lonely doing my washing up and not at least having the option to do a housework ramble. But I just got a shiny new microphone a couple of weeks ago. So hopefully that will enable me to be able to do washing up videos and have the audio focus on my voice rather than it being too distracting when I'm doing the dishes, because obviously you will hear the sound of the water running, you will hear the sound of dishes. So hopefully I'll be able to get a little bit more exaggeration on my voice and I'll be able to kind of drown out the other sound effects to an extent. So I'm going to have a go at that, and then I'll be able to be back in my kitchen again. How radical is my Razorhead jumper? Took me ages and ages to actually invest in an Razorhead sweater, even though I absolutely love the film and I love the design and I love Jack Nance's face. But yeah, it took me a long time to actually buy one. I ordered this one off Redbubble in case anyone's wondering. Really love this sweater. I do get a little bit of cause to wear it in England at this time of year. Not much, but a little bit of cause to wear it. In the evening when it gets chilly, if you're sat out in the beer garden or something like that, you might want to pop a jumper on. And this Razorhead one is definitely one of my favourites. So, what do I want to talk about? This is my dressing gown. This is actually not to be put away really. This normally hangs on a door, like in my living room or something, so just fling it over yonder. Yeah, so what I thought I might talk about today to an extent is friendship and what happens when friendships change, and just some of the things that I've learned along the way about friendship, and just some of my own personal opinions. As usual, just my own personal opinions. You're not under any obligation to agree with me, and certainly I'm always really interested to read your thoughts down below in the comments section if you have different ideas or different experiences. So I was recently talking with a friend of mine about the different roles that we play in friendships. And, you know, basically just how we get stuck in a specific role sometimes with a particular friend or within the dynamics of a friendship group. And that role becomes a way that other people can predict our behaviour and a way that other people can identify us. And it also becomes a way for people sometimes to use us or judge us, or, you know, think that they've got a handle on who we are and what we're going to do or whatever. And we can play a specific role in a relationship for a really long time. So say, for example, you might play the role of carer in a relationship with one of your friends. You might play the role of partner in crime, you know, hedonistic fellow wild child to one of your friends. And then over time, your priorities might change, your sense of what's important might change, your sense of how you want to spend your time is going to change, right? And at that point, you're going to start to move away from the role that you have been playing with that friend. And sometimes you will have played that role in a completely unconscious way, not really recognising that that was the role you were getting yourself sort of stuck into. And other times you might have recognised that that was the role that you played, and you might even have enjoyed sort of hamming it up and, you know, really kind of aligning yourself with that role almost overtly. But anyway, in any event, you change, your priorities change, your sense of what's important changes, and suddenly you do have to distance yourself from this role that you've been playing. And sometimes that just doesn't go down very well in a friendship. You know, sometimes the friend that sees you moving away from that role is going to struggle to accept that. and is going to sometimes take it quite personally. If the friendship is of a certain caliber and there's a certain amount of closeness there, then you absolutely can move into having a conversation with each other about the ways in which your roles are changing, why you want to change things up, why you might not necessarily want to make the same kinds of plans with a friend anymore, or you know, find yourself falling into the same habits with a friend anymore. And together, if you've got that degree of closeness, you can actually start to converse with each other about how you want to help the friendship to move forward positively. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they don't feel like they can have that kind of conversation, either because the closeness is not there, or because the friend that they feel like they need to speak to and they need to converse with is at a point in their lives where they might not take that kind of news very kindly, and they might respond in a particularly negative way. And obviously, when you've been friends with someone for a long time and you're nervous that the friendship will be compromised if you talk about how you're changing and how, you know, you hope to see the dynamic of the friendship evolve, what happens is you end up just sort of going into yourself. You don't say anything. You don't necessarily want to start that kind of conversation if you feel like it's going to hurt your friend or jeopardize the relationship. So there definitely comes to be some misunderstandings, miscommunications, lack of communication completely. Tension can definitely arise as the result of you trying to kind of shake your way out of this skin that you've been wearing without necessarily being transparent with your friend about it. Sometimes when it comes to the roles that we play within our friendships, we can find that the role that we were playing with a friend was healthy and functional and enjoyable for a while, but after that time you kind of realise that there was something destructive about it. For instance, there was this one particular friendship that I was in my 20s when, you know, we were really like good time girls, you know, we were partners in crime, we were sort of, it was a wild child sort of vibe, and we were sort of like evil twins, right? And after a while it became apparent that this friend of mine had a drinking problem, and at that point it kind of became apparent to me that, you know, that was something that we ought to take seriously. It was something that we needed to sort of factor in to the dynamic of our friendship. It's no longer fun or appropriate to play that wild child partner in crime role with somebody who actually takes their hedonism too far and doesn't get into a good situation with it and ends up, you know, using it to numb themselves or whatever. So that was a particular sort of case where the role that I was playing wasn't necessarily destructive or toxic at first, and it certainly wasn't for me, but we needed to kind of address in the end the fact that whenever we did enjoy ourselves hedonistically with each other, she would always just take it a bridge too far, and then I would end up feeling guilty and unsure of what kind of position that placed me into with her as well. Unfortunately, that relationship didn't last, as a great many friendships and relationships through your life don't actually last. There are a lot of friendships that will have a very profound effect on you through your lifespan, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to last you your whole lifespan. But never mind, because you can sometimes pick up a Danger Mouse t-shirt from a charity shop for £1. Hello! So there's always that, and I hope that this t-shirt will be with me until my dying day, because it's amazing. If you found yourself in a situation where you had a particular dynamic in a friendship for quite some time and it no longer feels comfortable for you, it no longer feels like something that is really aligned with who you are, then, you know, there's a high likelihood that you have evolved, you've changed in some way, and you no longer find that the dynamics of the friendship actually accommodate you as you are right now. They might be very much aligned with the former version of you, but they actually do not connect that much with who you've turned into. That's something that I have definitely experienced, and I would definitely say that for my part, the last time I experienced this a few years ago now, it was because I was undergoing a very positive personal evolution, and I think I failed to realise actually until it was too late that there were certain people in my midst whom I considered to be very close friends and whom I considered to have my back and to want the best for me, who actually didn't want the best for me at all, and were actually hurt and upset and almost kind of alarmed by the progress that I was making and the flourishing that they were witnessing in me. And I know that, you know, this can get a bit shadowy sometimes, because if we're evolving in a really positive way, if we are coming to know ourselves better, if we're going after our goals, if we feel more positive within ourselves, it can be very easy to look at a negative reaction that we're getting from a friend and say, oh, you know what, you're just jealous, you can't handle the fact that I'm, you know, becoming more positive, that I'm getting happier, that I'm moving on, that I'm being more stable or whatever. And that can actually kind of sort of get us off the hook for assuming our responsibility for what we may have done to kind of contribute to the breakdown of that friendship. So I definitely wanted to avoid doing that. I wanted to avoid getting into this mindset where I had fully decided that the breakdown of the friendship was due to these people being jealous, not being able to sort of strategize to sort out their own problems, and so feeling envious of me and angry with me for dealing decisively and constructively with my problems. I still believe to this day that that was a part of what was going on, and that was a big part of the issue. I changed exponentially in the last year and a half that I was friends with these two people in particular, who ended up leaving my life in a very unceremonious and in a very cruel way, actually. I definitely changed a lot in the last couple of years I was friends with them. And, you know, witnessing one of them just remain so utterly stagnant in a situation that was not making them happy, and trying to help that person and finding that I was kind of getting the help thrown back into my face, and this person was kind of on this sad carousel and just doing the same things over and over again, and yet claiming to want to change. I realise now, looking back, that my flourishing and my increased well-being was a problem for that person. It wasn't something that that person wanted to witness. That person was not applauding when they were watching me win. And I think one thing that I would say is that we should never, ever lose sight of the fact that we might have some responsibility for the breakdown of a friendship. Even though it might look like straightforward jealousy, it might look like that person just can't handle how well we're doing, and that's the end of that. We mustn't ever just close the book on it and convince ourselves that we bear no responsibility. I looked closely at the way I was behaving too, and I asked myself, you know, was I misunderstanding what that person needed? Was I so hyped up on my own thing that I was actually forgetting to check in? Was I trying to help that person in the wrong way sometimes? Was I coming across as frustrated or judgmental with that person because they were really steeped in the same cycle? I asked myself those questions, even though it was really hard for me to ask myself those questions, because this person had treated me so abominably when they walked out of my life. I mean, they stole money from me, I'm being serious. So obviously I wanted it to be just a cut and shut case of like, this person was just jealous and they let it corrupt them and they let their shadow overtake them. But I still wanted to look at my share of the responsibility again. So the first thing I would say is we do need to look at our behaviours as well, and just at least take some time to examine how we behaved and what we were thinking and how, you know, what kinds of behaviours we were exhibiting. At the same time though, I would say that it is very important in your friendships with people to pay close attention to who is not applauding when you are winning. The people in your life who claim to love you and care about you, they should be interested in seeing you win and seeing you thrive. When you are making strides, when you are moving towards your goals, when you are ticking off the things on your bucket list, those people who claim to love you and care about you should feel exhilarated by that. Sure, they might have their own problems, they might be dealing with their own stuff, they might not necessarily have all the time in the world to be by your side, shaking your hand, congratulating you, taking pictures of you while you thrive and flourish, nor should they be expected to. But they should say congratulations, and it should be sincere. They should be happy that you are doing well, right? I have always felt, ever since that happened to me with two of my supposed closest friends of all time, ever since I had that experience with them where they both changed a great deal towards me once my business started going well and I left, you know, my office job and that kind of thing, I have always said that from that point on I will pay very close attention to who the fuck is not applauding when I'm winning, because those two definitely were not, and the way that they ended up treating me, I feel, was a testament to the fact that I should be paying closer attention to the people in my life who seem to be actually a little bit put out when I'm winning and seem to almost be a little bit miserable to see me thriving. It can be very difficult, very different, very weird when someone who's been in your life for a long time, doing the same thing, making the same mistakes, enjoying the same stuff, having the same plans, almost very suddenly, or at least in your eyes very suddenly, like makes a break for it and starts focusing, starts zooming in, starts getting crystal clear and making things happen and doing things differently. It can be scary and it can feel alienating, but if you know that that person is doing that because it's the best thing for them and because they really wanted to focus and take their life to the next level, then your position as their friend dictates that that's something that you should feel pleased about for them. Does it mean that people who thrive and flourish never ever turn into massive arrogant dickheads? No, actually. Obviously, some people who thrive and flourish forget where they came from. They do start to disappear up their own backsides sometimes. You know, arrogance can be a sad symptom of success. It's not a myth that some people do let their success go to their heads. That is not a myth. And, you know, success does change some people. But I think that in just as many cases where it can change a person and a person can forget about their friends and forget, you know, how to talk to their friends well and how to treat people well, there are as many situations where somebody is thriving and succeeding and they are trying also to encourage their friends or help their friends with whatever their friends' goals are, but their friends can't handle it. You know, it's undeniable that there are people that cannot handle watching somebody become successful. It's undeniable that that does poke people's shadows. Here's a suggestion. Here's something that I think you could really try. If you are in a good place in your life right now and things are on the up and up and you feel as though you are really thriving and you're really making headway in your life, ask yourself, how have you been treating your friends lately? How much contact have you made with them? The last time you had a conversation with them, what was it about? How much of it was about you? How much of it was about them? How much of it was about other stuff? Do you feel like you really inquired into their life, their feelings? If they're having issues, did you remember to check in with those issues? Did you ask them how they're faring? It's really important to do this kind of thing because we very often don't realise how destructive we can be when we are on the up and up, when we are thriving, when we are changing, we're shifting, we're evolving. We need to recognise how that can sometimes feel for people who've been in our lives for a very long time, who might be feeling as though for their part their life is kind of stagnant or they're coming up against the same problems. They might not really feel like they're thriving themselves, and we do need to be aware of how our behaviour and the terrain of our lives can come across to them, and we need to be aware of how we can make them continue to feel supported by us. If you're having a difficult time at the moment, if things are really sad for you or you're feeling low, you're coming up against the same old issues, you feel like you're not really moving ahead positively, and you definitely feel like, you know, things at the moment are kind of grey, and you are watching one of your friends who is succeeding and is really making things happen, ask yourself, is it difficult for you to be happy for that friend? Is it hard for you to watch them succeed? Does it poke your shadow? Do you feel envious of them? Do you sometimes wonder, why is it them and not me? You need to be able to check those kinds of thought processes because they will affect the way that you treat somebody who is in a different situation to you, whose positivity and flourishing might actually be pushing your buttons a little bit. And you have to remember that somebody else being in a more positive, high vibe part of their lives isn't an attack on you. It's not something that that person is doing to slight you or spite you in any way. So if you come at that with defensiveness, with passive aggression, with tension, you need to ask yourself why that is and why you might be making a friend or loved one suffer because you are stuck in a stagnant place, you are feeling miserable, and you therefore don't necessarily want to see anybody around you thriving. If you realise that you have been neglecting friends or loved ones as you've been, you know, experiencing success and experiencing happiness, don't beat yourself up about it. Don't tell yourself that it makes you a bad person. Just correct it. Decide that you are going to correct it. Pick up the phone to a friend, write an email to a friend, organise to meet a friend for lunch or a drink, and really just kind of give them your time, hold space for them, and really inquire into what is going on for them. That's one of the best things that you can do. Rather than beating yourself up, rather than berating yourself, take action to put the situation right. Let that friend or loved one know that you are there for them. You don't necessarily need to say, I'm really sorry, I feel like I've been a complete arrogant dick. You don't necessarily need to share with them your exploration that's led you to the point of getting in contact. Just get in contact, or if you are in regular contact, make sure that the next time you see that person who's down on their luck or who's landed on their arse, you give them the lion's share of the focus and the attention and make them feel valued and make them feel seen. If you know that it's possible that you could have been mistreating a friend of yours who is experiencing success right now and really kind of evolving, and it's making you feel jealous or it's making you feel resentful, you know, reach out to that person and tell them that you're happy for them. Maybe congratulate them next time they tell you what they've been up to. You know, it's not their fault that you're in different places in your lives. And as long as that friend is making the effort to connect with you and ask you how you're doing, there's no reason why they need to bear the brunt of your frustration with what's going on with you. They are genuinely trying to help you, but at the same time they are living their life as well, and they're experiencing things in a different way to you. They're looking at life through a different lens right now, but that doesn't necessarily have to tear you apart from them. This individual that left my life in this really crude, cruel, shocking, deceitful way a few years ago really struggled with my success. In hindsight, I think of quite a few of the things that this person said that really just showed me that not only were they jealous of my success and really struggled to be happy for me, but they also took their moments to denigrate me and minimize my success and minimize the hard work that I'd put in. On one occasion, this individual said to me after we'd had a few drinks that they wish they could just get onto YouTube and chat shit for 20 minutes every other day and make a living out of it. And I was kind of like, okay, you know what, we've had a few drinks, I'm going to let that go. I know you're in a bad place. But in my mind, I was kind of thinking, that's not even what I do to make money. I'm a full-time counsellor and tarot reader, and on top of that, I do videos on YouTube, and on top of that, I reply to emails, and on top of that, I run my social media, and I do my taxes and my accounts myself. You know, there's a lot to my job. It's not just, you know, I put on some makeup, get on YouTube and chat shit for 20 minutes every other day. It was just, yeah, it was really... Now in hindsight, and I kind of recognised it at the time, but in hindsight with everything that went on and the way that this person just dumped me out of their life without so much as a second thought, it would appear, it makes me realise that that was indeed very much a red flag, and that's the kind of thing that I would definitely be looking out for these days, you know, going through that experience, having that friend of mine treat me that way, and then looking back at the different things that this person would say to me, the way that they responded to my various successes, just the little jabs that they took at me. I'm glad that experience happened, because that's the kind of shit I would really be looking out for now. And I remember that this person came up with quite a few creative things that they wanted to do. They were really inspired by me starting my own business and going full time and having a creative living. And of course, because I know something about that, I was very enthusiastic to help this person to get where they wanted to go. But this person lacked confidence. They lacked a sense of personal empowerment. They had self-esteem issues. They said these things to me, you know, as a friend, as a really close friend. So obviously, although I could give all of the practical advice and all of the friendly encouragement, if that person was going to continue to feel disempowered and have low self-esteem, there was nothing I could really do to get that ball rolling for them. That was going to have to be something that they were going to do for themselves. And they did not feel that they could do that. And they're still not doing that. You know, I hear through the grapevine that nothing has changed for this person. They're still doing exactly what they were doing before. So I feel like that was a big part of what led this person to look at me with such a shadowy perspective. The more that I was enjoying what I was doing and I was getting those little kind of confirmations from the universe and little things were happening that were making me feel like, you know, I'm really getting there and I'm really getting to where I want to be, the more this person backed away from me, and the more the demeaning little side swipes and insults came in, and the more they kind of formed allegiances with other people and sometimes intentionally tried to make me feel left out of things. And you know, with the benefit of hindsight, this was all to do with my life changing, with success coming to me, with me putting in the hard work and getting a return on that investment of time and energy. And look, like I said at the beginning of the video, or further back in the video, Yes, you can let success go to your head. Yes, people can become arrogant and unfeeling. Yes, people do become unrelatable and they do end up alienating their friends. But to me, I really wanted to be as close to this person as ever, and I wanted to help them achieve their goals. And so I would implore you, if you're having a difficult time at this point in your life and you find it difficult to be around a friend who wants the best for you, but obviously has a very different, much more positive situation themselves, do not take it out on them, you know? And if you are in the midst of that behaviour, do clock that behaviour. If anything, it's the friends that are actually experiencing success, that are actually finding that what they're doing is working, that are going to be among the most useful people for you if you want to start thriving and changing and dropping those bad habits and implementing better ones. You know, if those friends that are experiencing success and positivity really want the best for you, then pick their brains. You know, ask them questions, ask them for advice, ask them to be there for you. Let them know that what they've managed to achieve has inspired you and you want to do something similar, and what kind of advice do they have. You know, don't be afraid to ask that friend to advise you in some way or give you a hand, rather than feeling as though their success somehow diminishes you and their success is somehow proof on some level that they're better than you, because you've taken that to a place of toxic comparison in that moment, right? And that obviously is just going to cause a massive rift between the two of you. If you decide that their success is almost you know, a mirror that shows you that you will always fail, then you're really seeing that friend as a symbol of you know, the lack of worth that you feel about yourself. One of the things that I realized as a result of the experience that I had a few years ago is that some people take leveling up personally, and I think that in the past I have taken leveling up personally as well. In my mid-20s, I worked in an office with a couple of people that I became friends with, I became close with. We were work colleagues, we worked together every day, and both of them within the space of a year changed their lives really dramatically. One of them went off to the other side of the world, another one went off to a, you know, much more better paid job and a much more exciting position, and both of them left the job that they worked at with me on the same Friday afternoon, and that Friday afternoon was shit. And even though I said I was happy for them and, you know, we had our little celebration in the office, I cried all the way home on the bus. And I went home and I cried some more. And I thought about how the person that had gone off to the other side of the world to go travelling and everything, I thought about how, you know, that person was doing something that I hadn't managed to do yet, and I was a long way from doing. And I was also resentful towards that person because they'd had some financial help from their parents, and as I've said in a previous video, that's sometimes a shadow for me, and that shadow was like overwhelming back then. I just felt I wasn't happy for them. I wasn't happy for them, and I was finding reasons to be angry with them both. So I'm not saying that I've never been where this friend of mine was. I'm not saying that I've never in my life looked at somebody's success and resented it and wished that they weren't having it. You know, so I do understand how it is. I do see both sides. I took that leveling up personally, just as this friend of mine, this ex-friend of mine, took my leveling up personally. Now, the way this ex-friend of mine dealt with my leveling up was despicable, whereas I just sort of was probably a bit snotty on that particular Friday and I secretly wasn't really happy to see my friends thriving, because I felt like it reflected on me. That's honestly the truth. I felt like it reflected on me. I didn't treat them poorly. I certainly didn't do anything malicious to them. But I definitely have been in that situation, and we need to make sure that we're not taking leveling up personally. And if someone in your life is taking your leveling up personally, then you need to understand that you cannot be responsible for managing their thoughts and their behaviours. You cannot be responsible for their emotions. Their emotions cannot be something that you take ultimate responsibility for. They have to find it within themselves to understand that your success and the way that your life is going is not a reflection on them, and that you are not in any way doing anything that you're doing to be malicious towards them. Sometimes there are people who use their success as a way to jibe others, as a way to make others feel crap, crappy. And if you've experienced something like that, that's not fair, that's not pleasant, and absolutely it can make you feel about that big, and that's why people do it. And I vowed with myself a long time ago, when things started going well for me and I started getting more clients and I realized I might be able to go full time at this one day, that I would never ever use any of my particular successes or the fact that I do what I want to do for a living to make somebody else feel like shit. That's completely against my religion, it's against every fibre of my being. But because I do my shadow work really diligently, I am aware that I could have a propensity to do that if I don't keep an eye on that. I am aware that the ego works in all kinds of weird, yucky ways, and sometimes, particularly if you want to lash out or you want a very, very quick way to sort of cut someone down to size, you might end up using your success against them, or your money against them, or your whatever against them, you know, and that can be really ugly, really ruthless. And if you've ever done that, forgive yourself for it, learn the lesson from it, understand that that is not how you want to be, and it's not how you want to walk around in the world. If you find that someone in your life actually tends to use their successes or their triumphs or their money or whatever against you, and they use it as a way to make you feel small, then feel sorry for that person, feel pity for them, because that is a really sad way to live. It's such a crappy way to carry on. It might give them that temporary sense of satisfaction for that one moment, but the way that it corrupts you inside to behave like that it's really not a good look. It's not tasty, it's not nourishing. Also, of course, remember that you do not have to spend time around people who are treating you like that, and it's a total myth that you do. You know, for every single person who walks out of a friend's life because that friend has started treating them badly, you'll find 100 people who convince themselves that they're not allowed to walk out of a family member's life. Because family is family, it's a different thing, you know, we can't walk away from family, etc. That's BS, honey. You know, if you find yourself in a situation where a family member is consistently trying to make you feel low, demeaning you, bullying you, being passive aggressive towards you, you have your options. You have your options, shared percentage of DNA or no shared percentage of DNA. It's really important to understand that that option is there. And I'm going to talk about that more in another video. Let me know down below if this is something that you would like me to address in a dedicated video. I think I will. But I'd love to know down below if there are people who feel like they need a resource from me specifically about the idea of estrangement from the family, distancing yourself from the family, putting up strong boundaries when it comes to connections with family members. I've done that myself. There's a huge section of my family that I no longer speak to, and that's been amazing for me. That's been important for me. That's been something I desperately needed to do for my own sanity and mental well-being. And I would be happy to talk about some of the ideas and some of the experiences that I think might help those who are struggling to convince themselves that they are allowed to protect themselves against that kind of cruelty from a family member. If you've been leveling up spiritually, if you've been moving into a more positive or a more conscious way of being, and you feel like that's been really good for you, but you feel like it has meant that you've had to kind of move away from some former friendships, or you have found yourself being alienated from a former friendship group, then I just want to let you know that loneliness is a part of the leveling up process sometimes. And when I say leveling up, I don't mean like taking yourself to a point above other people. I don't mean like you're becoming superior to your old friends or anything. I just mean leveling up for you personally on your life journey. So I'm certainly not talking about hierarchy. I'm not talking about superiority. When I talk about leveling up, I'm literally just talking about further empowering yourself, stepping up to the plate in your own life, you know, figuring out what your priorities are, going after your goals, and just living your life in that more conscious, more enjoyable way, okay? So please don't get it twisted. I'm not talking about superiority over old friends. But what I would say is that it's normal to have a period of loneliness while you wait for the new people to play with. Please don't tell yourself you're never going to have friends again. I told myself that so big time when I had to move away from my old friendship group. It was a small handful of people that I felt had personally wronged me, but I felt like at the same time I didn't want to continue really with the level of closeness that I had with friends that were mutual with them. I felt like I couldn't do that, and because I'd moved away from the area as well, I didn't really even have access to the other friends on a really sort of regular, intimate, physical basis in any way. It was like I'd moved to a completely new part of the country, and the breakdown in the friendships and the realization realization of the betrayal had all occurred in conjunction with me moving. So it was a very lonely time. I was insistent that I like never wanted to get close to people again. I had been completely fucking burned. I was in a really shit place. And I definitely spent a while telling myself that, you know, you can't make friends in your 30s the same way that you make friends in your 20s. You're supposed to keep the friends you made in your 20s for life. And I've kind of missed the boat now when it comes to having those really meaningful connections. I don't know why the fuck I told myself that, guys. People make friends at all kinds of ages, and in all kinds of situations. But at the time, I was really convinced that the friendships I'd made in my 20s were the ones I was supposed to keep, and they were the ones that were supposed to mean something for the long term. And I felt absolutely isolated and completely alienated. If it wasn't for the fact that I had a partner at the time that I was living with who felt similarly fucking betrayed and backstabbed by these people, then I think I would have been experiencing even more loneliness. But I definitely was feeling very cynical, very angry, very burned, very fatigued, very exhausted by what I'd been through. And I was very much convincing myself that there was no way back from that, and that I wasn't interested in friendship ever after, and that nobody would be interested in being friends with me. It made me doubt myself in so many ways, and it just made me really clam up. But I just want to say that in so many ways, when it comes to friendship dynamics, when it comes to the quality of the openness and the quality of the time spent with friends, I really did go from shit to champagne. I was definitely not supposed to carry on in the kind of dynamics that I was actually operating in. There was a much more sensible and suitable place for me on this earth when it comes to friends, and I found my way into that situation against what I felt were a lot of odds, you know. Sometimes a little bit of loneliness can be absolutely sacred. It is so necessary. It's a really important tool for leveling up spiritually. If I hadn't have had that time in loneliness, and if I hadn't have had that time in shock, and if I hadn't have had time to kind of slink away and be a hermit and just kind of think about what I really wanted out of friendship and what kinds of beliefs these experiences had left me with, I don't think I would have been able to level up in terms of work with the goddesses. I don't think I would have been able to level up with regard to my spiritual practice, and I don't think I would have been able to level up as a spiritual counsellor who spends a lot of time helping other people to understand how to really connect with their spirituality as a tool to improve their lives. So I did all of that out of a place of sacred loneliness, and I call it sacred because even though it hurt like a bitch, and even though I really felt like I was always going to be lonely, and like I'd made some hideous mistakes with regard to who I was spending my time with and trusting in, and it put me at odds with myself, and for a while I felt like I couldn't even be friends with myself. Even in spite of all of that, I feel like that sacred loneliness brought me to this incredible, neutral, clear space where I was at one with myself again, and I found my center again. And from there, everything seemed slightly more possible. And now I'm on this really high hill and just looking out at the horizon, stretching all around me, feeling like it's full of possibility, it's full of hope, it's full of joy. And actually, I've healed from my anger, I've healed from the deceit, and I know now that sometimes we just move in and out of each other's lives, and that's how it's supposed to be. And even though I did experience beforehand in my teens and in my 20s friendships ending, it was the first time in my life, in my early 30s, that I'd experienced friendship ending as a result of my life getting better and me feeling stronger and me earning more money and being more liberated and all of these wonderful things happening, to realise that I could lose friends as a result of really experiencing one of the high points of my life and witnessing people not being able to stomach that, you know, really experiencing a lot of bile around that and a lot of jealousy. That was something I really had to contend with. That was very difficult. And I suppose that's really the bulk of what I wanted to talk about, was really the fact that you can be at a real high point in your life. You can feel like everything's going your way and it's really amazing. And you can want to take your friends and your loved ones with you on that journey. And you can feel sincerely moved to want to help them. But they may take all of that joy and all of that positivity right to the gut. And it is like a kick in the gut for them. And if that's the way they want to play it, and if that's the way they choose to see it, sometimes there's nothing you can fucking do about that. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, I know there's nothing I could do about my friend's reaction to my leveling up and my increased sense of joy and my recovering from my back injury, which was a big part of it as well. Being able to dance again, you know, and just constructing my business and finding that people were responding to what I was putting out and they were wanting to work with me and, you know, and pay for sessions with me. I know that I couldn't have helped those two people, principally two people, to fucking deal with it and to be happy for me. They made the decision that they couldn't be happy for me, and that's going to be up to them to contend with, and that's going to be their set of lessons to learn. You know, really in the long run, it's not that much to do with me. I can't help someone to understand why they couldn't be happy for a friend who was doing well. I can only look at what happened from my part of things, you know, how I behaved, the decisions that I made, and think about whether or not those were the correct decisions to have made, and what I could have done better, and how I can understand how my own actions may have caused harm or may have made them feel a certain way. I mean, I definitely don't take the blame for things like a friend stealing from me and being deceitful and lying and that kind of thing. And I don't take the blame for some of the life choices that person was making that were so damaging, and so damaging to me and damaging to other people around that person. I don't take responsibility for that, but I do accept that it might have been very difficult for that person to be around me with the way my life was going at the time. It might even have just been impossible for them to connect with me anymore, considering that our lives were going in such different directions. And I can understand how I might have come across as unfeeling at times, and I can understand how it must have felt alienating just even looking at what was going on in my life. Even if I was trying to be there for that person and support that person as well, I can even understand why they felt like demeaning me and undermining the effort that I'd put in. Even though it hurt me at the time, I look back now and I do feel more pity for them than I feel anger. And I can understand sometimes why we want to cut somebody's efforts down if we feel like they so directly reflect upon ourselves. And if we're taking somebody else's successes as evidence of our failure, yeah, we're going to try and cut them down a peg or two. And no, it's not very nice. But we do need to just examine consciously why we might be doing that and make a decision that it's not in alignment with who we really are and how we want to be. And like I said earlier in the video, I had this experience with a couple of friends who were really just excelling, moving on, really excited. Was I excited for them? No. Did I take it as a symbol of my personal failure? Yes, I did. Was it painful for me to see them go and be happier and earn more and, you know, fly the nest? Yeah, I wanted them to stay with me, and I wanted them to have the same problems and look the same way and be the same people so we could all be together. And that overshadowed for me the happiness that I wanted to be feeling for them. It was about me, and it was about the way that their successes made me think about my own failures or my own insecurities. And I'm not sure whether or not they clocked that behaviour. I'm not sure whether or not I treated them in a certain unsavoury way. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But I do remember being in a position in my life where somebody else's happiness and success poked my shadow. And we just have to be really honest with ourselves about when that is happening, and we have to decide that we do not want to allow that to happen and we want to behave differently. I would love to know what you guys think about anything that I've said, what your experiences have been. Have you been in the position of leveling up and being resented for it? Have you felt alienated after actually sort of moving your life in a more positive direction? Have you felt like somebody leveled up and then treated you like crap? Or maybe they leveled up and it poked your shadow and you treated them like crap? Do you feel like you're leveling up now and your friendships are not quite what they used to be? Are you in that sacred loneliness kind of place, and how are you dealing with it? I would love to know. I wish I had more time. I've got a client now, guys, because I'm fucking blessed and I do my job full time, and I want to thank you guys for that. You guys are part of what makes that magic happen, and I really, really appreciate every single audience member that I have on YouTube. So much love and blessed be. Mwah.